In this video, we'll talk about creating a supplier invoice from a purchase order. So at this point, the subagreement within CIS has been executed. The purchase order has been created and approved by the departments. And so now the supplier has started work on their subaward, and they've started to send OSP invoices so that they can get paid. So the supplier will email OSP invoices at osp.gatech.edu. OSP will then go into that inbox and review each invoice and do a 10-point compliance check. They'll check for basic details like the PO number, that the driver work tag is there, and that there's an amount. And then they will then create a record within Workday. Once the invoice has been created by OSP, the Cost Center Manager will be notified to approve. Before we walk through the Cost Center Manager approval, let's review what needs to be verified on the invoice and the buttons each approver will see. First, we will verify that the invoiced amount matches the original supplier invoice amount. Next, we will validate that the driver work tag is correct. Then we'll validate that that OSP has attached the correct original invoice. Once you complete your review, you'll scroll down to see these four buttons. Approve means all information was entered correctly. Send back means that the invoice is missing pertinent information. You can send back either to the grant manager or OSP to make edits to the invoice. Add approvers is not applicable to the subaward invoicing process, and cancel unhighlights the request you are on and moves to the next request in your inbox. It does not cancel the request. So as the Cost Center Manager, I'll come in to Workday and I'll go to my Workday inbox. I'll find the invoice record that was submitted to me, and then I will go through my review. So basically what I'm going to be looking for is, is the supplier correct? Is the invoice amount actually what matches on the original invoice that was submitted? Does the line information look correct? Do I have the right grant number? Things like that. That's what I'll be looking at. And then I can also download this original invoice so I can take a deeper dive into the invoice as well. So I'll go ahead and approve this invoice. And then the next step is for the grant manager to approve this invoice. So now, as the grant manager, I'll review the invoice in Workday, and so I'll scroll, I'll find the inbox button right here, and then I'll find the invoice record in my inbox, found it right here, and then I'll scroll down and review the invoice. Now, the main difference between this approval step versus the Cost Center Manager approval step is the grant manager has the ability to edit this invoice. So this is valuable in case the supplier sends the detailed financial manager receipts, right? So if you have some unallowable costs, they can make edits based on that. They can attach receipts here, additional receipts. They can do the same review but do a little bit deeper dive than what the Cost Center Manager did. So since this invoice was pretty straightforward, I'm not going to make any edits to this one. I will do the same review that the Cost Center Manager did. I make sure that the invoice amount is correct, make sure that the grant is correct, and then I'll go ahead and approve. It goes through another budget check because the grant manager has the ability to edit the invoice. So I will refresh this page. The budget check is basically an automated process within Workday. And so now I'll go to the process history to see who's next in line to approve. And so you'll see it's the Principal Investigator, Sujin Yi. Principal Investigator approval of subrecipient invoices are now in Workday. Principal investigators must approve reports, invoices, and related documentation submitted by the subrecipient during the project. This includes verification that all costs expended by the subrecipient are approved for payment and are allowable, allocable, and reasonable. So now I am the Principal Investigator, Sujin Yi, and I will review the invoice. So I'll go to my Workday inbox, just like the Grant Manager and Cost Center Manager. I'll find the invoice, which is right here, and I'll do the same review. I'll make sure that the invoice amount is correct, make sure that the line information, the grant number is correct, and make sure that the work has been done appropriately as per what's mentioned here on the invoice. And so, I can either send back to OSP or the grant manager, or I can click approve, which is what I'll do right now. So now, after I click approve, it goes to the final approval, which is AP. So the last approval is for an AP analyst to come in to Workday and approve this invoice. So I'll go into my Workday invoice. I will find the invoice. So it's right here. And then I'll do the same review. I'll make sure that the invoice amount matches what's mentioned on the original invoice. I'll make sure the grant line is correct. And I will go ahead and click approve. So now that the invoice is completely, the workflow is completely finished, so I'll go back into the invoice here and we'll just check to make sure that the status is approved. You'll also see that the payment status is unpaid. So now what happens in Workday is a settlement job will run, and since the payment status is immediate, this invoice will get applied and we'll go ahead and pay the supplier. Once we pay the supplier, this payment status will change to paid.
Thank you for watching this video. For additional information about subawards, see osp.gautech.edu. And for general support, see ServiceNow at services.gautech.edu.